Welcome everyone to join us for the NSPN's Fireside Chat today, which is on data for crisis, security, and recovery. My name is Marilis Ensalu, but feel free to call me Mary. I'm in charge of opening this event today, and I will give you an overview of our team, the structure of this event, and finally our guest speakers. Next slide, please. For those of you joining an NSPN for the first time, NSPN stands for the National Science Policy Network, which is a politically neutral organization formed by early career scientists with a mission to get more involved in policymaking by just including community, by empowering science policy advocates, and by just training the new generations. And we focus on science policy, also communication, advocacy, diplomacy, equity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. So I'd like to introduce the amazing team without whom this event would not have been possible. Ona Ambrosaite is the outgoing chair of the Science Diplomacy Committee, the committee that has been in charge of organizing this chat series. Anastasia Burnett has been leading this project with the help of Ope Oyewole, so we owe them great thanks. Alexandra will be our questions moderator for this session, and Abigail Giles has provided excellent support throughout this entire preparation process. I personally am super excited to be here to open this event today. And really briefly, I'm currently an Earth Sciences PhD student at Northern Illinois University. And I've been working with the Science Diplomacy Committee for, I'd say, over a year now. We would also like to give a shout out and thank the organization who made this event possible, which is the Duke University Rethinking the Diplomacy Group. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so here we have a good overview of how today's fireside chat topics came to be. We started off with keynote speakers who discussed data in the context of advancing global health and equity. This kind of sprung into an idea for the series from which the first session focused on data governance and user agreements, just to see how to navigate public affairs on different scopes. The second chat zoomed in on the role of data in global sustainability efforts and climate resiliency. So it seemed like a natural progression to transition into talking about data from the perspective of security, which is what we're focusing on today. And on the right here, you can see the Data Diplomacy series poster. Also briefly about the administrative notes before we introduce our speakers. For this particular event, during the first part of the chat, speakers will discuss the questions presented by our moderator, Alexandra, and we will open the floor for Q&A after if there is any time left. As a reminder, please keep your microphones on mute during this session. Also, due to the sensitive nature of this event's theme, we ask that you keep your questions nonpartisan and that you would be mindful of professional communication with the speakers and moderators. Next slide, please. All right, so without further ado, I would like to welcome our guests, Raul Rikk, who is currently a Science and Development Director of Milrem Robotics and former Director of National Cybersecurity for the country of Estonia. I've personally had the privilege of having Raul as a distinguished lecturer at the Estonian School of Diplomacy, training myself and other early career diplomats in e-governance and cybersecurity. Raul has developed several international and domestic organizations focused on cyber and data security, including NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence and the National Cyber Security Department at the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. Raul also holds a master's degree in military science from the Finnish National Defense University and master's degree in management of informational technology from Tallinn University. Our second guest is Ahmad Mohseni, who is currently a development coordinator and data management officer for United Nations Ukraine. His role involves supporting Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction as he coordinates the activities of 24 UN specialized agencies who have an annual investment of over, I think, 1 billion. Prior to this, Ahmad served in the Central African Republic to help countries reach their set sustainable development goals. He holds a bachelor's degree in French literature and master's degree in international relations and politics. So this was a short bio, but both of the presenters are welcome to speak more about their professional experience if they like. After I hand the lead over to Alexandra now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary, for kicking off the event. My name is Alexandra. I'll be moderating the event today. And very briefly about myself, I'm a PhD candidate in biomedical engineering at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm really excited to be here to chat with our speakers today. So first, I'm wondering if you guys could please share a little bit more about your backgrounds with us, starting with Raul.
Yes, I think I'm supposed to say good morning, everyone, because in Estonia, we have actually 5 p.m. So, but good morning, and it's great to be here. I'm not going to go too deep in my background, but I did a military career actually in the Estonian Defense Forces a long time ago. Then we started to establish a NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence because the topic was so new. Nobody even knew what the cyber actually means. So we started, I think it was like 20 years ago now. And of course, now the cybersecurity has been worldwide topic and headache for many decades or many years. And I'm very happy to share my experience in that regard. Thanks.
And what about you, Ahmad?
Thank you, Alexandra. Good morning and good afternoon, colleagues, everyone. It's good to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. And I'm honored to share this panel with Raul. So my name is Ahmad Mohseni. I am currently working with the United Nations in Ukraine. My background, so I have studied French literature, then I did international relations in Paris. And since then, I have been working first with the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva, and then I moved to the United Nations, couple of years in New York. Then I was mostly focused in Africa. I have worked in Niger, that you have probably been following in the news. It's not going very well there now. Then I moved to the Central African Republic. I have also worked in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And now I'm based in Kiev since January. What do I do in Kiev, Ukraine? My job is mainly focused on the recovery and rehabilitation of the country. As you know, it has been invaded by the Russian Federation, full-scale invasion since February last year. We call it full-scale invasion because the first round of invasion happened in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and the war in the east of the country. So I have been in Ukraine working on rehabilitation, on recovery of the regions that are either liberated and also places that require humanitarian aid. I'm sure that we will jump into that in more details, and I will be happy to get into that. So my experience has been mainly focused in post-disaster, post-conflict, and conflict situations.
Great. Thank you guys both so much for sharing a little bit more about yourselves. And now I'm going to dive into some questions. I'll ask 5 questions and maybe a 6 if we have time and there are no pressing audience questions. So my first question is going to help our audience better understand the mechanisms behind data-driven policy. So embassies have long been havens to help reduce risk and offer protections to people of the countries they represent. In our increasingly digital world, Estonia has taken the lead in extending embassies to data through the development of e-Estonia, a data embassy. So Raul, could you speak on how Estonia became a leader in e-governance and what exactly a data embassy is and what its functions are?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So when you ask that how Estonia became a leader in the e-governance area, then I can easily fill the whole hour, but I try to keep it short. So, to be honest, we didn't think the way that, okay, let's be the leaders in the digital area, but it came very naturally to us. So it probably started when we got the independence back from the Soviet Union. So we got rid of the Russians, and then we started to establish our own nation. It was 91, so now it's about 30 plus years after that. And at the same time, kind of like this electronic boom started with different internet developments and different solutions that companies brought on the market. And it was very logical to think that let's try to use the IT as much as possible. And very soon we noticed that others or other countries are not doing so. So they are still operating on the paper, and they have the old-fashioned mechanisms how to do things. And it was kind of surprise. I think it took about 10 years to understand that we have pretty much done well in this area. And because we didn't have many legacy systems, we started from the scratch. So we created the new systems according to technology that was available. And that's why we were able to build the e-governance system. So, but also what we did in the beginning, that one of the first solutions was e-cabinet. So e-cabinet is the solution that our ministers can work without paper. So all meetings are prepared digitally, and they are conducted digitally. And also when the meeting ends and the prime minister needs to sign the memo or the decisions, he or she can do it digitally as well. So it was one of the first solutions that was accepted by the cabinet very well. And after that, the cabinet was much more eager to implement IT solutions in the other governance areas also. For example, in the e-tax system. So I don't know if you know, but in Estonia, we can declare taxes pretty much in 5 minutes. So you get a notification from the tax board, you go to the website, everything is pre-filled. So let's be honest, the tax board knows much better how to fill the tax form than normal citizens. So they do that, everything beforehand, and after that, we can just look it over and sign it basically, and then we can accept it, and it's done. Very easy. And many other solutions. So it came kind of naturally. So once you implement very efficient and comfortable systems in one field, people start to want them everywhere. So after a while, it became kind of like a normality that if I remember that if some of the agencies, government agencies, weren't able to provide digital services, then they were perceived as a, lagging behind and not doing their job very well. So that's how it started, and now it's so widespread. And I think one of the great observation we had during the pandemic period, last 2 or 3 years, when nothing was affected, everything we were able to operate and interact with the government the same way as before, because everything was digital. We didn't need to go anywhere. We were able to sign contracts. We were able to interoperate with the government agencies in every sector. So it was really beneficial during the COVID period. Of course, I can continue with it, but you had the second part of the question also. That was the data embassy question, and why we started with data embassy project is because Estonia is quite small, and actually every country in the world is more small regarding or if you consider how to secure our data, because of course there are some there are different threats that you have to take in consideration. Of course, criminals, so it's one type of threat. Military operation is another one, but also natural disasters or sunstorms, for example. So you really want to keep your data the other side of the globe as well. So whatever ever happens in one side, you can still keep your data, especially if you are so dependent like we are. So all government services are online. Nothing is kept on the paper. So it means we really have to protect everything we have. And that's why we started to think that, okay, how can we keep data in different countries? Because if you keep your data in another country, they certainly, for the security reasons, they can preserve the right to access the data, or at least the data center. That's the normal procedure. So for example, if we want to keep our data in US soil, it means that your CIA or FBI or whoever is the appropriate security agency, they actually have the right to go there because it's US soil. So that's why we started to keep our data in our embassies, because embassies are considered as the territory of the country. So Estonian embassy is the Estonian territory. So we started to keep our data in different embassies. But it creates another difficulty. It is that you might not have such a great internet connectivity to every place. And then it's question about the data storage and physical security and many other aspects, energy, for example, and so on. So then we started to think that maybe we can get an agreement with certain countries so that the country could consider the data center, at least our room in the data center, as Estonian soil, so they don't have the right to go there if something happens, except of course fire or something like that. And we were able to get the first contract with the Luxembourg. So that was just kind of like a first step in the long road. And we did the agreement that we keep our data in their data center, and the Luxembourg government doesn't have the right to go there. So it's Estonian territory. And now we are looking other options. So the best option is, of course, to keep data in another side of the globe, like in Australia or New Zealand. In our case, also in US probably, because US at the end of the day is very well protected, and probably no war happens there in foreseeable future, and maybe some other place also. So that's how this logic goes, and we are in the middle of that. So not everything is done, but the logic is that if you are really dependent on data, you just need to think how to keep it secure. Okay, I stop now here. Thanks.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Estonia goes next in that space. And Ahmad, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts from Raul's breakdown. So I'm wondering, could you weigh in on how e-governance operates on the ground during peacetime as opposed to times of war or crisis? And hypothetically speaking, most countries don't have data embassies. So do you think Ukraine and similar post-conflict or post-disaster countries could benefit from data embassies or similar e-governance structures to help with their security or data recovery?
Thanks so much, Alexandra. Before jumping into Ukraine, which is also a post-Soviet Union country, so there's a lot of similarities with Estonia, and I'll come to that. Just give me one moment to explain what the UN is, because sometimes it's not very clear to everyone what the UN is, what they do, what they're focused on, and all that. So the UN was created in 1945 after the Second World War. And one of the main objectives of the UN was to protect the peace and security in the world. Probably you might say, well, now Russia has invaded Ukraine, so they were not very successful in that. But well, in addition to that, we do some other work, including delivering humanitarian aid around the world, working on sustainable development and climate action, and also protecting human rights. Think of the UN as a global government. And then we have different specific agencies that you can consider as different ministries that work on a specific thematics, right? Since you have, for instance, in governments, a Ministry of Education, then in the UN, there's a specialized agency that works on education. It's UNICEF, that's a pretty well-known agency, and UNESCO for culture and for education. If it's about development, then you have the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program. If it's about environment, then it's United Nations Environment Program. So there are specialized agencies that work on different aspects. Unfortunately, we don't have a specialized agency working on data and artificial intelligence, but we're gonna get there. Recently, there was a high-level meeting at the UN Security Council. That's the body within the UN that manages the whole issues around peace and security in the world. And there was a discussion around artificial intelligence and how the UN and the global community can get together to kind of create an ethical framework or a framework for the development of artificial intelligence and also for the management of data. So that's the UN. I talked about what the UN does in Ukraine. So let me come to your question on the data. Going back to what Raul was saying about the fact that this is a post-Soviet country, there wasn't a lot of digital infrastructure that existed when it took its independence in 1991. But it is a country that I was impressed with how tech savvy and how data driven it is. Just let me give you an example of a platform that they use in Ukraine. It's called the DIA platform. It's DIIA. And it's a platform where citizens could do every part of administrative work in that platform, be it declaring taxes, use it as an e-residency card, use it for requesting social benefits. You can see your, if you're working with the government, you can see your pay slip there. You can do everything. You can vote there if you want. You can participate in some citizen votes and all that. So this is the platform that they use in Ukraine. It was developed before the full-scale invasion of 2022, but it has been used a lot during the war and right now as well, and in many occasions. One occasion that has been, and this is a platform that was developed, some of the components with the help of the United Nations. And one component, one feature of this platform that has been used a lot recently is what they call the e-recovery program. And what that consists of is that, so, you know, the country's in war, and Ukraine, some of the territories gets attacked almost every day. Kiev might get attacked once a week, or sometimes it could be every day. And every time that they attack, there are either the debris that fall on houses, or houses get attacked, residential places gets attacked. So for instance, imagine an Ukrainian loses his house and needs resources to build the house, right? And this Ukrainian could just go on this DIA platform and apply for compensation on this feature, which is called e-recovery. You can enter the details of your house, how it was damaged, when was the date, what was the damages. You can do a very initial assessment yourself. If need be, some government officials could come and see what was the state of the damage. And then through that, if it's approved, you will get some sort of an amount of money to build your house. So this is something that they developed during the war. Another use of data currently in Ukraine is how they're trying to protect their citizens in the very literal sense of the word. Whenever there's an air threat, there's a threat of missiles attacking Ukraine. So you have the sirens that goes in the city, right? You hear them and you have to go seek shelter. Since it's such a tech-savvy country, what they have also done is that they have developed an application for mobile phone, which is called Threat. And there on that application, whenever there is a siren in the city, in case you're living far from the city center and you don't hear it, you will receive a notification on your phone that tells you that there's a siren and that you have to go seek shelter. So this is some of the ways how they have used data in Ukraine. On your country, on your question about whether other countries could benefit from such technologies. The countries where I have worked in, especially Central African Republic and Niger, it's not as tech savvy as Ukraine. The digital infrastructure does not exist. The penetration rate of connectivity and use of internet is not that high. So using data for such usages to make the work for citizens more transparent and accountable and all that has not been that advanced. However, one thing that we have tried to use data in these countries is how we design policies and how we make sure that the citizens and the communities are engaged in the design of the policies and they contribute to that, and that they are that they see that their ideas and that their aspirations are represented in the policies. So yeah, I will stop there.
Great. I want to dive a little further into public policy and e-governance. So, Ahmad, as a policy practitioner, what do you think really are the benefits of data-driven programming and data-driven public policy, especially in the event of a disaster or crisis? And who are the beneficiaries of these efforts?
Thanks, Alexandra. Just before jumping into that, one thing that we did, for instance, last year was to conduct an assessment of what has been the impact of the war on Ukraine. What has it changed, right? We read in the news and we watch in the news that it has had devastating impact. There's a lot of lives that have been lost. A lot of things have been damaged, but we have to put numbers on it, right? We have to conduct assessments and put numbers on it. So just a couple of figures, since I see that this group is all data passionates and data scientists. I'll just give some figures. We conducted an assessment that we call a rapid damage needs assessment, and we found out that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022, the poverty has increased from 5% to 24%, and we have lost around 15 years of progress, development progress in the country. 7.1 million people have been pushed into poverty, according to the official records, but of course the numbers are much higher than this. The war has led to the death of 9.6 thousand civilians, including 461 children, and 12,000 have been injured. The World Health Organization, which is an entity of the UN, says that up to 10 million Ukrainians are suffering from mental health issues and PTSD. There's 13.5 million Ukrainians that have left either the country or that have moved from their houses. So the situation is pretty devastating. The estimations that we have done shows that the needs for reconstruction and rehabilitation of Ukraine in the past year has been $411 billion. So the needs are really huge. And that's how we use the data. We do these assessments to really understand what has been the impact of the war on different groups of populations, on different regions, and on different communities. You know that the war has a different impact on women. It has a different impact on children. It has a different impact on marginalized groups, on people with disabilities, on female-led households and all that. So it is important when a policy practitioner designs a policy to understand the needs of these different population groups and the different regions. So that's how we use data. We do surveys, we do household surveys, we try to go see different communities, ask about their needs, gather data to first understand what has been going on, what are the needs, and also to do it in a better way, what they call the build back better, because we know that the infrastructure that is a legacy of the Soviet Union in Ukraine does not respond to the aspiration of the populations today. So it's important not only to rebuild, but also to rebuild better. So the data helps us also to understand that and how people want their houses, their villages, their communities to be built better. Once that assessment is done, then the policy practitioners has to sit and do some qualitative data collection, right? Because we cannot just design policies with numbers. It's also important to get feedback, to talk with people and understand what are really the needs. And then you design the policy, and you have to make sure that the policy development is as inclusive as possible, to make sure that all organizations or communities, citizens, they can have their word, and they can really influence the way the policies are designed. One thing that the government of Ukraine has done, and I will stop with that example, is what we call the DREAM platform. So what is the DREAM platform? Since, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things that have been destroyed, damaged in Ukraine. So what the government has done with the support of the UN and the World Bank, we have tried to gather data on all the objects that have been destroyed in Ukraine, be it museums, hospitals, schools, houses, residential places, roads, transportation, anything. So we have gathered data on all the things that have been destroyed. We have tried to understand what has been destroyed, what's the impact, what's the need, and what needs to be rebuilt. And on this platform, all this data is gathered, and then the government has developed a prioritization criteria, and we try to prioritize which object needs to be built sooner than later, what's the need in terms of resources, and how we're going to do. As I mentioned in the beginning, before we go into the meeting, Ukraine is a country where it has a lot of energy problems because the energy infrastructure was getting impacted by the shelling and by the missiles. So it's important to build these energy infrastructures before the next winter, all right, which is in a couple of months. So this kind of criteria would help us to build the infrastructures and the things that needed sooner. And this data collection and this platform helps us to do it that way. So that's an example of how we use data and how we use qualitative information to design better policies and respond to the needs of the communities.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really great to learn about the humanitarian side of data as well. And Raul, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Maybe not particularly to that, but you certainly have a new, very interesting question on the table.
Yeah, so next I'm curious as to how countries might respond to external threats. So Raul, data has been recognized in reports as a special or critical resource because it helps countries carry out essential services like food transport and electricity. And because of its essential value, data can often be attacked. For example, cyber attacks can harvest data on citizens, agencies, banks, and utility companies to disrupt and degrade networks. So what exactly goes into protecting a nation's digital infrastructure and the data of individual citizens during political crises?
That's of course a very wide question. That basically the question is that how to ensure data security and protect data we have, and it's a big headache to every country that how to organize data security, especially if you are very dependent on the data. And there you have different actors, as I mentioned before. There could be criminals, there could be different countries who want to use their intelligence power to get into the data, but also natural disasters could affect your data availability. And in that case, you have to consider all possible risks. Some cases you can how to say, trust on allies, but in certain cases, for example, the private data, you cannot do that. So you certainly know that there has been a lot of debate between the European Union and US, that's how to ensure the free data flow. But at the same time, it means that we have to find a common way how to do the data protection. And European Union has very different approach to data security or private data security than US. So you have probably heard about the GDPR that created a lot of turbulence when it came out. So basically, if you deal with the European citizens' data, you have to consider that the citizen is the data owner if the information is related to the person. And it means that whoever is handling the data and managing it has to ensure the security, so nobody else can get access to it. I tried to keep the criminal aspects maybe away from here, from the discussion, because then we go into the deep to the national cybersecurity, and maybe it's too broad area. But more from the personal data protection side, we had a lot of challenges when, for example, Microsoft said that after some years they will not sell you any software, but they provide cloud services. What it means in practice, it means that we as a citizen, so we as a country, don't know where Microsoft keeps the data. They might keep in US, they might keep it in China, they might keep it on other places. We simply don't know. And the big corporations usually don't want to, they don't say it to you, and they don't want to make any changes how they manage data because it's too complex for them. So it means automatically that we cannot simply use Microsoft products for personal data management, because we just cannot ensure for the citizens that the data is secure. And this is kind of like a difficulty I see that will not disappear, but it actually will be even bigger issue, that how to deal with cloud services. Because with the cloud service, you basically you are not playing according to your rules, because the data is not in your jurisdiction, but you play with this country's rules where the data is. And if you even don't know that, then you cannot ensure any security to the citizens. And then we for example, we dealt with Microsoft about a year in order to find a solution how to deal with the data management. Because in our case in Estonia, the basis for data management is encryption. So we encrypt everything. So and the ID card or the whatever we give it to the citizens, the application from the mobile phone, for example, these are basically encryption devices. So we give the encryption devices to the hands of normal citizens. They encrypt data, and that's the way how we keep the data exchange secure between the citizens and the government or government services. And with now other solutions, like I said, Microsoft or Confluence or whatever is there, Jira, whatever is used, they're all cloud-based solutions. And the question is that how can you ensure the data security then? So we see clearly that there is probably no other way than that the data has to be in our region. For example, data has to be in, not maybe in Estonia, but in the EU soil, because otherwise, if we keep it elsewhere, then again, the security agencies have always right to do something about it. So, for example, Microsoft is in a very odd situation. On one hand, when they operate in Europe, they have to obey European laws and regulations, but because they are located in US, they have to follow the US laws and regulations as well. So when, for example, US security agency comes to them and asks to see some data, what they should do. Should they follow European rules or should they follow US rules? That's a headache. So there is no solution. So we see clearly that either the data is kept in European soil so that our laws and regulations apply here, or the countries find an agreement internationally that, okay, let's do it this way so we can ensure to the citizens that the data is safe. And this is not so much also about that, about the trust issue. So we are allies with US, and it's not about that, but Microsoft is not US government. Microsoft is a private entity. They play according to their rules. And it's simply a question that how to supervise and how to keep the oversight of the data managers. And that I would say that this is a huge area where a lot of diplomacy and international efforts should be put in order to find ways how we can exchange data the way that it is secure. And if we find the way, then of course it eases the data flow. So for example, at the moment we have digital signatures accepted with many different countries, but not with US. So I cannot accept and I'm sure that US doesn't even have such kind of electronic signatures as we have in Estonia or in EU at the moment. So the question is that how to make these two really big entities interoperable So the way that we can make everybody's life much easier in the future. So I don't know if I answered your questions, but I stop here now.
Yeah, thank you. That was really great. Ahmad, in addition to data protection, there are also efforts for data recovery. So I'm wondering if you could also speak to how data can support the recovery and reconstruction of, again, post-conflict and post-disaster countries in a general sense.
Thanks, Alexandra. I think in my prior response, I touched a little bit upon that and the platform that has been developed in Ukraine and how we help in the recovery and reconstruction of the country, and how it's needed to do data-driven and evidence-based assessments, and then based on that respond to the needs for recovery and reconstruction. I would like to touch upon maybe data protection in a general sense and how it has impacted a little bit Ukraine and also Georgia, the Eastern Europe side, and also touch upon what Raul was mentioning about having this kind of international framework for different countries in terms of data sharing and data management and all that. As you might remember, so the first rounds of invasion in Eastern Europe started with invasion of Georgia in 2008, and then the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of the eastern side of Ukraine in 2014. And I think that was a wake-up call for Ukraine to want to invest in its digital infrastructure and make sure that its data is well protected. And also, you might remember that there was a big wave of cyber attacks in Ukraine just 1 month before the full-scale invasion. So in January 14th last year, 70 government websites, including the DIA app that I mentioned earlier, that the citizen app, was attacked by we don't know by who, but it was attacked. And that's when Ukraine and many other countries realize that it is important to protect their data. The more we move towards a very data-driven society, the more it's important to make sure that the citizens trust the system, that the digital infrastructures are strong, and all that. And I believe that there are some discussions going on between Ukraine and Estonia around these data embassies. Because the infrastructure in Ukraine could be fragile to different attacks, and I mean this is a war going on, so they could either the Russian Federation or other criminal groups could attack the digital infrastructure, and this could lead to some breaches of citizens' data and all that. So there are some discussions going on that, but in terms of what needs to be done to ensure that there is both accountability at a global level and there's a framework that manages all these different relations, I know that, well, Microsoft, in addition to being a holder of big amount of data, they have been also doing a lot of advocacy to launch a digital Geneva Convention. So just for your background, Geneva Convention, there are 4 Geneva Conventions that's called like the international humanitarian law, or the law for conducting war or protecting civilians. So Microsoft has been advocating since a couple of years for a digital Geneva Convention to ensure that during times of turmoil and maybe disasters and conflict, that there's at least a framework that would allow countries to manage their data and ensure that the very sensitive citizen data is not breached and not been put into jeopardy. And in addition to that, there has been a lot of discussions at the UN between the different countries to make sure that there's a framework that all countries could adhere to and make sure that that's the way data is managed, data is exchanged and all that. Because Raul mentioned the case of European Union. There's a framework in the European Union, but believe me, as a data officer of the UN, where you work in different countries, it's really difficult to understand what are the liabilities, to which framework should we adhere. Is it the one of the European Union? For some websites, they really ask you to make sure that you adhere to that and the use of data and the exchange of data. And in our work, where we have to exchange data to make sure that the aid is delivered to the right people in a transparent way, that's really complicated. So yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions and answers, but there has been some initiatives at global level, be it the Digital Geneva Convention by Microsoft, or the discussions at the Security Council of the UN and other entities, to make sure that there's at least some sort of framework, name it principles or something, that all countries could adhere to make sure that the data flow and exchanges is as smooth as possible, especially during the times of conflict and disaster and turmoil.
Maybe just a quick comment that when we start to discuss about that, about this kind of like a data convention or how to exchange data between different countries, we very quickly come to the question that how the cybersecurity ensured in each country, because that's usually that's the obstacle. So if the protection is not there, then nobody will exchange anything. And also, then it comes to the question that what is the country's ability to deal with data protection? So if everything is based on encryption, so can this country actually manage the encryption system? Do they even have experts on that field? So can they build up the infrastructure that ensures the data security? I have done a lot of capacity building on many different countries, from Mongolia to Tonga, and we always end up with the same questions, that what is the country's ability actually to manage everything? So of course they want to do a big jump and leap to the better digital future, but it means that they need maybe different educational system, they need more IT experts, and that's the headache again, because the market for IT experts is global. So once Tonga is able to develop 10 IT experts, then Google will probably buy them, so they will not work there. So there are a lot of questions that how country can actually ensure the data security. That was also our lessons learned when we started to digitalize our country, that first we had to solve all questions to related security. After that, when the trust was built, then people started to use solutions, and they also trusted their data to the hands of the government.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because in my next question, I was going to ask like how these transnational differences affect your work. But I think, Raul, you really hit on that point pretty well there. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Ahmad?
No, I think Raul really, and also in my responses for the previous questions, and also Raul really touched upon that. So nothing to add from my side.
Okay. Well, next, I'd also like to dive into how digital infrastructure affects governance as a whole and vice versa, starting with you, Ahmad. So technology and data can often be carriers of our values. For example, Estonia's digital society has been lauded for securing public trust and protecting citizens' personal information, as well as for its resiliency during the pandemic. In effect, a high-tech networked world has come to be synonymous with a democratic world for those who can experience its benefits. But speakers in this series have also cautioned against the utopian dream that technology can inspire. So as you consider the multiple domains you've worked in, could you speak as to how we should think about our data and how we can build sustainable and equitable digital infrastructure among and beyond EU member states?
Thanks, Alexandra. I would like to go back to something that Raul mentioned in the beginning in his introductory remarks, and that was that during COVID-19, Estonia was one of the countries that was not really that did not face a lot of obstacles in continuity of the business, right? However, this was not the case in many countries, including the UN. For the UN and many countries, COVID-19 was really a wake-up call. We understood that that we did not have the infrastructure to really continue working. And here it is important, and I touched upon that when I said that Ukraine is so different than many other countries that I have worked, including Central African Republic and Niger. The infrastructure that Ukraine has, the digital infrastructure, does not exist in the country. So as you can see already, there is a divide between the North countries and the South countries. There is a divide, there is an inequality between the different countries. And this has kind of created this big issue of where do we go as we move, and as we are currently in the fourth industrial revolution, there are countries that are left behind. Just I could give you some numbers that I found very interesting as I was preparing for this event. During the COVID, we found out there's an agency of the UN that works on these numbers. It's called the International Telecommunication Union. We found out that 466 million people used internet for the first time during COVID. And today, recent numbers have shown that still today there's 2.7 billion people who don't have access to internet, and there's 53% who don't have access to proper connectivity. If you do a comparison of different continents, the internet penetration in Europe is 89%, in America is 80%, and it's only 40% in Africa. So as you can imagine, there's more than half of the population in Africa that don't have access to internet. So there's already a big divide between these different countries. So when we talk about sustainable and equitable digital infrastructure, it is important to not address this issue from a one-size-fits-all approach, right? We have to understand that while Ukraine has the necessary digital infrastructure, there are countries where we don't even collect the data on citizens. There are countries where it's a still very primitive way of doing things. So I believe that, first of all, what is important is indeed the issue of privacy is very important to build trust for the citizens. In addition to that, I think the way we do it should be as inclusive as possible. Some of the technologies that have been developed, it's done in Western and developed countries that might not be adapted to the least developed and the underdeveloping countries. So it's important that in addition to helping these countries build these infrastructures, it's important to also build their capacities, right? And also this is linked to what we were discussing earlier about a convention, an international convention. Indeed, and I totally agree with Raul that when you talk about an international convention, you have to make sure that there are at least those very basic fundamentals that exist in different countries in order to make sure that we all adhere to one convention. So it is important to have this two kind of approaches for countries that need that kind of capacity building support to build their capacities, and then at the same time make sure that there is a convention, that there is a treaty between different countries on how data is managed. And then one last thing that I want to focus on: the divide between in the digital world. The divide, it's not only between developed countries and developing countries. It's not just between the North and the South. It's also within societies, right? I feel like even in the most developed countries, the younger generation might be more tech savvy and know how to use digital platforms, know how to use data than the older generation. Think of people with disabilities. Think of people who are not data literate. So in addition to focusing on these aspects between states, it's also good to think of how we make sure that the platforms that we use, the technologies that we use, the way we collect data and make policies is understood by all different populations, and that everyone is at least somehow data literate. I give the example of DIA platform earlier for the case of Ukraine, but let me give you an example of another such platform that exists in my country, my second country, which is France. And there I have seen many times that there is a big generational gap between in the society in using these data platforms. I have had people coming to me and saying, well, we don't know how to use this platform to declare our taxes, right? Because there is no, and it's mainly older generation. So it's important to also focus on that, on how we make sure that the divide in between society, between different groups of society, does not lead to more inequalities within. So these are all the values that needs to be adhered to, and that includes, of course, privacy, transparency, and also inclusivity. We have to make sure that the policies that we adopt that the technologies that we use is as inclusive as possible.
Thank you so much for that, Ahmad. Yeah, it's really clear that we also need to focus on differences within states. It's really, really insightful. With the few minutes we have remaining, I would like to open it up for audience questions. So as a reminder, you can write your questions in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. And if there are none, then I will ask a final question. So in my last question, I kind of want to get at on how we can use data diplomacy to counter some of today's most pressing threats. So in this globalized world, there are many international affairs affecting data sovereignty and diplomacy. Many countries wish to retain access and control over their data, but have been threatened, for example, by climate change when it destabilizes power grids, or by quantum computers that will render current encryption methods obsolete. What do you see as the next steps in ensuring that our data strategies continue to protect human rights and de-escalate international conflicts? Maybe starting with Raul.
Yes, that's kind of hard question. I think it comes down to the security question, that how can we actually ensure the data security, and how we built up our systems the way that this kind of like a different crisis doesn't affect the data security so much. And there is no single and silver bullet for that difficulty. So basically, we have to think systematically how we built our digital society, so how we ensure security, how we do international cooperation in that regards, and all these aspects has to be solved somehow. So no easy answer to that. Maybe Ahmad, as a diplomat, can answer better to that question. So please.
Thanks, Alexandra and Raul. I think you started the beginning of the response that I was about to give. Indeed, it's not a very easy question. I think it requires really to make sure that it's a multi-stakeholder approach, that we make sure that all the different parts of the community are involved. And this includes the private sector. I and some of my colleagues who work on data, we all acknowledge that we don't really understand all the bits and pieces of the digital world and the data and artificial intelligence and all that. It's moving so fast that we have to take our time to really understand how things are done. And it was even really interesting to see that open letter that was signed by even CEOs about the fact that we should probably kind of not go so fast in development of these new artificial intelligences, because there should be at least some framework. So it's important. So what I think what could be the next steps is that perhaps have a kind of a multi-stakeholder approach launched, in which private sector, civil society organizations, governments, and even citizens are involved to make sure that the framework that is designed, how we are going to move forward with these new technologies, with data and the protection of data and all that, is representative of the values of different groups in the society, and also to make sure that the bias is reduced in the development of these technologies, to make sure that it is inclusive, and that at least the basic values of protection and human rights are still there. So yeah, not an easy question, but I think a lot of opportunities to explore and to think about.
Yeah, definitely not easy, but incredibly interesting. And we are out of time, so I am going to close out the event. And as we wrap up, I would really like to thank our speakers for participating in this event. So thank you, Raul and Ahmad, for sharing your perspectives on e-governance, data recovery, and cybersecurity. I'd also really like to thank everyone who helped organize the event. And although this is the final fireside chat in NSPN's Data Diplomacy series, I do encourage the audience members to reach out to our speakers if they have more questions, or to the NSPN members behind the event if you would like to get involved. And finally, thank you to everyone who attended today, and I hope that you have a really great rest of your day.